Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this week's edition of Roundabout Sports, presented by Interstate 70 Sports Media, where our passion is our profession. I'm Jeremy Karp. Thank you so much for tuning in this evening, wherever you may be listening and watching, whether it be at home, at work, if you're listening to it on the road, on one of our many outlets such as Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and so many more. Thank you so much. We got a very special show tonight because our insider James Knox will be joining us as our guest. He's got a lot to talk about because, there's a lot of recent developments going on within the St. Louis Cardinals organization, and we have to talk, folks, about these Stanley Cup playoffs, especially because, look at that guy right there, number 91. That's right, Vladimir Tarasenko. He put the team on his back in Game 5 as the St. Louis Blues defeated the Minnesota Wild 5-2 to take a 3-2 series lead. They're just one win away from going on to face the Colorado Avalanche, who are, in my opinion, the best team in the Western Conference. And I know a lot of people may not like that opinion, but that's just my thought on the matter. But also feel free, to comment with any questions you may have for either myself or James, or give your input. It's like an open community forum type thing. And we really want to hear from the audience because you all matter to us, So there's that. With that said, we'll get started on a little bit of some sports updates at the moment. So right now, the Pittsburgh Penguins are leading the New York Rangers 2-0 with about 7 minutes to go in the second period. The Washington Capitals are leading the Florida Panthers 1-0 at the end of the first period. Tonight at 8:30 Central Time, the Dallas Stars and the Calgary Flames will be facing off against each other. And that series is one of my favorites that's gone on so far in the playoffs. They are tied 2-2, so we'll see in this crucial Game 5. Meanwhile, we got some good baseball scores for you. The Braves and the Red Sox are tied at 3 apiece at the bottom of the fourth. For the Cardinals, it is 3-0 St. Louis. Juan Yepez hit his second home run of the season. It was a solo shot, and it was his first career home run at Busch Stadium. But it is 3-0 St. Louis over the Baltimore Orioles, who unfortunately edged out the Cardinals last night. Meanwhile, I still can't believe this is real. I know I don't have my glasses on, but I know I'm not reading this wrong. The Cincinnati Reds, who are by far the worst team in baseball, beat the Milwaukee Brewers 14-11. You did not hear that wrong. 14-11. Probably more runs than Cincy scored in the past week. Also, the New York Yankees beat the Toronto Blue Jays 5-3. The Miami Marlins beat the Arizona Diamondbacks 11-3. And the Philadelphia Phillies beat the Seattle in the Kansas City area. Right now, the Royals and Rangers are tied at 0 runs apiece in the top of the third inning in Texas. So Kansas City will be batting. One quick thing on the Royals. They really got to get it figured out because right now, they are in fourth place in their division at 9-18. They're 7.5 back of the first place Twins. And on top of that, they are a minus 46 run differential, which I'm just going to say is, I believe, the third worst in baseball. Let's see. Yeah, the Reds are minus 72. The Pirates are minus 49. So, yeah, there you have it. The Royals minus 46 in run differential. Third worst in all of baseball. They really got work cut out for them and things to do. They're 2-8 in their last 10. But, I'm not going to be the one who's going to be delving into this all by myself. Like I said, for those that don't know, we have an amazing journalist reporter insider James Knox, who is actually a longtime umpire as well. And when MLB was on the lockout, I mean, he provided some of the most crucial coverage that kept Interstate 70 Sports Media really on top of things that were happening inside Major League Baseball. So I'm so grateful for him. And you can find him on Twitter at JC_Knox80. And you can find him on Facebook as well for the latest news and updates. And he also is the host of Knox's Corner, which you can find on Interstate 70 Sports Media. And he goes through the latest updates, breaking news in the sports world, if I may say so. He does a pretty good job. Also, if you want to advertise with us, if you're a local business, just send us a direct message on our Facebook, on our Twitter, whether it be at Interstate 70 Sports Media, Talking Dynasty, hosted by Adam Frex, Roundabout Sports. Definitely, we support local. That's a big thing for us, and we definitely want to help you get the word out on your business and or product. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome a longtime friend of mine and one of the most talented insiders and reporters you will find. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Roundabout Sports, the one, the only, James Knox.
Hey, Jeremy, how are we doing tonight?
Doing all right, James. How are you doing this evening?
Doing fantastic.
Awesome. Allergies are kind of kicking my butt a little bit, so try not to sound too nasally, but the Zyrtec is going to kick in.
I understand. Trust me.
So I think one of the biggest developments recently that's happened, and the Cardinals' name has been floating around heavily in this, is that for the Boston Red Sox, Xander Bogaerts has been listed as a big name to potentially be traded. And according to John Morosi of MLB Network, the St. Louis Cardinals are among the favorites to land him. What is the realistic possibility of St. Louis being able to acquire the all-star shortstop?
I think it's legit, and here's why. I think, obviously, the Cardinals have a need at shortstop. I mean, Brendan Donovan's filling in there tonight as well as last night. He's got a 2-run double tonight. But you need more of a steadying force there. And I saw what you put out earlier. Do you make a trade? If it was, hypothetically speaking, Xander Bogaerts for Nolan Gorman.
Right.
There's a part of me that I think I might, and here's why. And that's because Xander Bogaerts is a proven factor and a proven player in the Major League Baseball realm, where Nolan Gorman, while he's got great power numbers at Memphis, his strikeout percentage is somewhere in the 37% range. And while that is kind of trending for Major League Baseball players, you have a higher, you've got the three main outcomes, and home runs and strikeouts seem to be, two of the three. I'm just not sure if Gorman, how his talent's going to play in Major League Baseball. I'm sure that'll get me like crucified online by saying that, but and it may. I think the other thing that would play into this is I make that trade if I can re-up Bogaerts and keep him around in St. Louis for more than just the term of his current contract.
Right, and I think that's one of the big things when these hypothetical scenarios have come up. Now, one quick thing before I get back on the Xander Bogart conversation. Whit Merrifield just hit a solo home run, so in the top of the third, the Kansas City Royals are up 1-0 over the Texas Rangers. So there's a good sign right there. Going back to everything with Xander Bogaerts. So yeah, one thing I had put on the I-70 Sports Media Facebook page, and it's honestly something that's been circulating all over social media in general, is the possibility of trading a guy like Nolan Gorman for him. And when these hypothetical scenarios come up, the biggest thing, you had just mentioned, if they sign an extension, beyond what the current contract is. Now, realistically, how long do you think that extension should be for something to really materialize in St. Louis for Xander Bogaerts?
I think you got to look at 2 or 3 years, and here's why I say that, because 2024 you're projected to have, Mason Wynn, if they keep him as a shortstop, because he's got he was a two-way player coming out of college. He could pitch as well.
Right.
If they keep him at the shortstop position, 2024 seems to be a big year. They're also talking about that would be the year that Jordan Walker would make his appearance in the majors for the Cardinals as well. Here's my other thing, and I was thinking about this while you were talking about the Whit Merrifield home run, is the price may not be, a high prospect like Nolan Gorman. You may be able to, you could possibly unload Paul DeJong's contract and another prospect for Bogaerts, depending on what the Red Sox want to achieve going forward. The whole other thing was, and JP Morosi put it out earlier, is like, if the Red Sox continue to struggle, that Bogaerts' name is on the market. I don't see, and isn't that something? You go out and you make a big splash like Trevor Story and you're struggling the way you are. But I don't see the Red Sox being able to turn it around anytime soon with the way their pitching staff looks. With that being said, you may not need the price to get Bogaerts from the Red Sox may not be that big. It may not require a Nolan Gorman, but I would say 2 to 3 years, because obviously you would want that extension to kind of overlap Mason Wynn making his MLB debut, if that is indeed when it is in 2024, just because you don't want to have a situation where he gets to the majors and kind of gets shell shocked and then has struggles right away and there's no fallback plan.
Do you feel that the speculation of him going to the Cardinals really is contingent on Paul DeJong's status? So for those that don't know, Paul DeJong, all-star shortstop, was just sent down just a few days ago to AAA Memphis. At the time of his demotion, that's really what it was, he was batting 130 this season with, I lost track of well over 30 strikeouts already on the season.
Right.
It was, and he had 1 home run, 9 RBIs. It was just a very piss poor performance by a guy that we know can get the job done. So with that said, do you think, how does Paul DeJong play into this whole scenario with Xander Bogaerts, possibly Nolan Gorman, and then, we'll get into some of the other guys that are starting to rotate into this?
So I think unless Paul DeJong really turns it around and starts showing that he can hit major league pitching, I don't think he figures into this. And I'll tell you why, because, I think the Cardinals, with them sending him down to Memphis, they kind of showed their hand. They are at the point now where they can't wait around for Paulie to get it fixed. And it's kind of strange. It's very much the Matt Carpenter dilemma here. Because Carpenter was an all-star. He was hitting, 30, 40 doubles and 30 home runs a year. And, the OPS was through the roof, and all of a sudden he just kind of fell off a cliff. And that's what happened to DeJong. DeJong was an all-star in, what was it, 2018, I believe. And then, or maybe 2017.
29. Oh,
was
I believe
it
it was
20?
Yeah, I believe it was 2019.
It was right. And it was somewhere in there. And like the second half of his all-star season, he fell off the cliff, and he hasn't been able to get it back. Now, 2020 being the outlier year, he dealt with COVID just like I think everybody on the team did. And then ever since then, he's just really never been able to turn it around. He did. It's interesting because they've almost switched spots. Bader would chase the outside slider and anything breaking ball wise off the plate. And now, Bader's the one that's disciplined and he's hitting for power. And DeJong, his bat speed is slowed down. He can't catch up with a fastball, and he's flailing at everything off the plate. So, I don't know. There's nobody really in AAA that's going to help him get right. The same hitting philosophies are used down there as they are in the majors. This is going to be all on him, and it may be, nobody's watching down there. There's nobody that's going to ask you the questions after the game is like, hey, why did you go for 4 with 3 strikeouts? Or, why did you chase this pitch, or what's going on? Maybe being a little bit more relaxed. But honestly, I don't figure that DeJong plays into this unless he has a massive turnaround, just because the Cardinals have played their hand. I know he has, I think DeJong still has another option, but he's, you only use one option now with the new CBA. It's one option per year. I think he's kind of. I don't want to. I never want to throw a player under the bus, but I think the Paul DeJong experiment has run its course here in St. Louis.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because we'll take all right. He was an All-Star in 2019, and you had mentioned at the second half of that season, post All-Star break, is where DeJong really started to fall off. So Paul DeJong from 2020 to 2022, and 2020 was the outlier with COVID, shortened season, everything that could go wrong in 2020 did. And somehow the Cardinals still made the playoffs.
Right.
But nevertheless, since then, Paul DeJong from 2020 up to when he just got sent down, his average is 202. He has struck out 178 times. He's hit 23 home runs, 77 RBIs, and we'll just say out of 585 plate appearances, he's had 118 hits.
Wow.
And I mean, it's just glaring how rough it's been. And meanwhile, for Harrison Bader, I mean, this year alone, he's hitting 242. He hit 267 last year. And, he's definitely got DeJong beat in the speed department. You brought it up perfectly that at the plate, he's become a lot more disciplined. There was a lot of people I know that were concerned Bader would just be another Peter Borges, that runs speedster on the base paths who can field well, but when it came to the plate, there was no intimidation factor. But Bader's at the point now where he's really starting to prove people wrong with that. And meanwhile, DeJong's doing the literally exact opposite. And, you mentioned earlier also, before we get back on topic with how DeJong plays or doesn't play into all this, Boston's in a very tricky spot because, like you said, they are playing terrible baseball early on this season. They are last in the American League East. They are 11-19, which is already 11 back from the Yankees. And, criticize the Yankees all you want about how they build their teams, but the bottom line is they build their team. And if you can't keep up with them, that speaks volumes. And you had mentioned it yourself. The Red Sox go out and get Trevor Story, and everybody automatically put them as the Red Sox as top contenders. And here they are, almost 3 full games behind the Orioles, where the Orioles hardly have a big name bat in the lineup.
Right.
So yeah, there's multiple variables going on at the moment at the same time, and it affects how the Cardinals are going to approach this. I feel like their eyes are on Bogaerts, but I don't know if their hands on that trigger to really make the move. What do you think?
Well, like what we've seen, and the Cardinals have always been like this. If you go back to the 2009 trade for Matt Holliday, rather, the Cardinals are generally more apt to trade for a big bat than they are to sign one in free agency. Generally, because you're not giving up. I mean, the contract's already set. You're not having to, bid against the rest of the market for the player.
Right.
So I think that the Cardinals are in win now mode, and I think that a lot of that because of Yachty, because of Albert, and because of Wainwright, that they are in that mode now where they want to win, that they want to put the best product out on the field. I think they also know that they have a glaring void at shortstop, and Eduardo Sosa, obviously he dealt with the COVID, and he's back rehab wise. I think he was in Springfield last night, and they moved him to Memphis tonight, and then we'll get him back to St. Louis probably before the Giants series this weekend. But even then, I mean, shortstop, if you go back into the 80s and early 90s, was primarily a defensive position. You didn't expect power to come out of there. Yes, you expect batting average, but there wasn't a lot of pop. You weren't driving in a lot of runs. Ozzie Smith being a perfect example, had a Golden Glove, and he would show signs of pop every once in a while. Ask Tom Niedenfuer and the Dodgers about that one. But I mean, it wasn't expected. And as we got into the 90s and you saw shortstops, like like an Edgar Renteria who could swing the bat and had pop. And then, you get into guys like Trevor Story and Xander Bogaerts. Now shortstop is a premium offensive position, and the Cardinals have a huge glaring hole there. And I think that Bogaerts is he's going to be the least expensive option that's going to be out there. Plus, like I said, if Boston is struggling that bad, then they're not going to be. I don't think they'll be asking top dollar or top prospect for this guy. Now, I could be completely wrong, but if you're looking at the Red Sox, I mean, if that's the problem, they may ask for a prospect that can play the position that Trevor Story is playing now and move him to shortstop where he's more comfortable.
Well, and that's the thing. And, we mentioned Paul DeJong is hitting 130. You take a guy like Bader, even though Bader's not going to play shortstop, trust me, anytime soon. And he's batting 242. We take a look at a guy like Edmundo Sosa, who is working his way back up. He's batting 160. And then you even have the guy that they're planning on putting there and Tommy Edman, and he's batting 290. He's had a rough first 2 weeks, but now he's really starting to pick it up. The problem comes in when you look at Xander Bogaerts' stats this season. Now, yeah, we mentioned the Red Sox are doing terrible. Bogaerts is not. Xander Bogaerts is hitting 354, 2 home runs, 10 RBIs, a stolen base, a 880 OPS, and 113 at bats. He has 40 hits already, and on top of that, I mean, he's only struck out 26 times this season.
I was going to ask, what if you've got that stat in front of you? What is his on base percentage as well?
402.
There you go.
That right there, and that's huge because the Cardinals. This is what I love about the Cardinals lineup, or at least the players on the roster, and how I think the lineup can be really dangerous. You got a mixture of guys that get on base, and then the ones that don't get on base a whole lot drive those guys home.
Right.
And then, of course, you got your Goldschmidts, your Nolan Arenados, the guys that'll do it all. So you get a guy like Bogaerts, and he's only 29 years old.
Right.
Still very fresh, long career still ahead of him. But you get Bogaerts, for the sake of the argument. I mean, because we know when, for example, Nolan Gorman's getting called up. We really don't. Every time there's a move that is made, if it doesn't involve Nolan Gorman getting called up, Cardinal fans are upset.
Yep.
And the thing of it is, I don't think he's going to be like Jeremy Hazelbaker, where he's going to be 28 years old by the time he gets called up. But at the same time, it could be another full season to where we don't see him, because like you mentioned at the top of the interview or at the top of the discussion, the strikeouts are an issue. And you already have that issue in the main lineup on the big league roster. Why would you just want that continued on? That's one of the reasons DeJong got sent down. So Bogaerts is definitely an improvement against every available option, including Nolan Gorman, because he is solidified and proven. It's just a matter of, like I said, the Cardinals do know how to pull the trigger on trades. And this is their way of getting that deal that they are looking for. Why go into free agency and have to pay, $30 million a year to a guy when you could get, the player in a trade for the third of that price?
Right.
And then you can extend him for 2-3 years, which to me is what's most necessary for this type of thing to work out in the eyes of everybody involved. But with DeJong getting sent down, it really exposes the glaring issue. And that to me is a position which was once the strongest part of the Cardinals organization has become the weakest. And that's the shortstop position.
I would agree. Yeah.
And, you're solidified everywhere else on the infield, but shortstop. You
Right.
don't know who you're going to put. And You can put Tommy Edman there, but then it affects him because he has to throw farther, he has to throw harder, and James, you've been in baseball a long time. I haven't, but I'm assuming the adjustment is not as easy as it may seem.
You're
Switching
right.
positions.
You're right. And at shortstop, there's more range necessary as well. And that's fine. Edman had started out his career at shortstop, but here's the other thing. If you move him to shortstop, who plays second base? I mean, you're opening up another hole that ultimately you have. So, I mean, I think the one thing that I would do, and that's what the Cardinals have done, or at least shown the last couple nights, is putting Brendan Donovan at shortstop and keeping Edman at second, is you don't want to – there's no use to, robbing Peter to pay Paul here. And that's kind of what you would be doing, is you're taking a Gold Glove second baseman and putting him at shortstop, and then who's going to come in and play second, And I guess that would be where, well, why don't you – that would be, well, bring up Nolan Gorman. There are two things that figure into that. Other than the strikeouts, you got to look at it this way. If the Cardinals call him up before June, that's a full year that's going to be used here in Major League service time, which means that's one more year closer to when you have to pay him. The other thing as well is, Nolan Gorman's not on the 40-man roster. So if you were to call him up, that means you've got to designate somebody for assignment or remove them from the 40-man roster, which means they're going to have to go through waivers. So it could be a situation right now for Nolan Gorman. Everything is timing, and he did not perform extremely well in spring training. The strikeouts in Memphis have been there. Of course, he's got the power and he's hitting home runs, but that's fine and dandy. But if that strikeout percentage is approaching 40%, and you're adding him to a lineup, like you said, that already has, a big time strikeout problem, it just doesn't seem, it's just not going to work. I mean, you can't, you're trying to fix a hole in a flood wall with a cork. And, that's not going to work. It'll soak up some of the water, but ultimately you're going to spring another leak. And by moving Edman to shortstop, that's what you would be doing is ultimately opening up and springing another leak in your lineup at second base.
And I think one thing, and you bring up a great point about the strikeout problem, because historically over the past few seasons, the Cardinals have had, to me, I think Goldschmidt and Arenado are the exceptions to the rule. But for the most part, a lot of the big bats they've acquired via either trade or free agency are known for having a lot of power but high strikeout. And I think, to me, the two biggest examples to that scenario are Mark Reynolds.
Oh, goodness.
I mean, don't get me wrong, this guy, like you said, he's hit. I'm going to look it up and do the research over here, because I know it was at least over 300 or 298 career home runs. This is the thing. He also, in 2018, at the time when he was playing, he led all active league major league ball players in strikeouts with 1,800. I mean, so there's one example. Another one, Brendan Moss.
I was going to say, yeah.
Brendan Moss. I mean, I remember the Cardinals acquired him, and, they were excited because the guy would hit long balls. I mean, he had power.
Yeah,
he really did.
Yep.
But, I mean, I think he still might hold the record for the longest home run at Busch Stadium 3.
It was 464 feet?
Yeah, it went
nuts.
to the right field side, and you just never saw it again.
Yeah, that was enough for 10 for sure.
But at the same time, once again, the strikeout issue.
Yep.
And then I think you can even make the argument for another guy one guy that hasn't been striking out much, but has been struggling. That's a new acquisition. Is Corey Dickerson.
Yeah, I was going to mention him.
He has struck out only twice this year, which is great. And the thing of it is, he is actually, no, I take that back. That's a spring training. He struck out 8 times this year. And he has a 184 batting average. So the Cardinals, I agree with you. It's all about timing for Nolan Gorman.
Right.
You do not want to send him up at the wrong time. I mean, the Cardinals just got done winning an arbitration case about with Tyler O'Neill, which we're going to get into next.
Right.
But yeah, it's definitely about the timing with Nolan Gorman. What's going to happen with Paul DeJong, and are the Cardinals going to pull the trigger and make a move on Xander Bogaerts? Because 9 people out of 10 you would ask, they'll tell you the Cardinals are the favorites in a scenario in which you were to acquire him. So with that, we're going to move on to what I actually had just mentioned. And for those that didn't listen, first off, this is Roundabout Sports. I'm here with I-70 Sports Media insider James Knox, and thank you all for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe, share, comment, whatever, interact. We're here. But we want to talk about another all-star in the Cardinals, and that is Tyler O'Neill. And Tyler O'Neill, one of the biggest bright spots on the St. Louis Cardinals over the past couple of seasons. So it was an arbitration battle between the Cardinals and Tyler O'Neill. And for those that don't know, this was O'Neill's first of 3 trips through the arbitration process. He lost the hearing against the Cardinals, and he will be taking home a $3.4 million salary this year. He had filed for a $4.15 million salary for 2022. And they've been trying to work on a long-term deal, but they haven't been able to get to anything yet. And James, I just have to ask, was the $700,000 really worth all the fuss with O'Neill and the Cardinals?
I don't think so. I don't. I mean, so here's how, and I don't know what his comps for. That's why I was trying to look up to see if there was any word or any release out of that hearing of like what the Cardinals compared him, what player they compared Tyler to, and I couldn't find it there real quick. He's done it for 1 year. I mean, prior to last year, he struggled, and he struggled to stay healthy. And when he was healthy, I mean, yeah, he would hit his home runs, but he was also striking out a ton. He wasn't hitting the ball hard. No. Short answer to a question, no. The long answer is a little bit more in depth, but honestly, I don't see it because, like I said, prior to last year, he did have trouble staying healthy.
Yeah, and so typically these arbitration hearings happen over the off season. But because the lockout happened, they pushed everything further. And the arbitrator's decisions are to be based solely off a player's body of work up through 2021. So O'Neill's batting right now is 198, only a couple home runs, and he's only having, I think, a slugging of like 317 or something. I mean, it's not good. High. And but that doesn't factor into this hearing. It's what's happened in the past that's factored in. But it raises the questions now because obviously he's not happy with the fact he lost the hearing. But when you see the result and how he's been playing this year, you got to wonder to yourself, was it good, right, for the Cardinals to value him just a bit lower? It's only, I know in baseball, from the fan perspective, $700,000 is a lot different than from, the perspective of the player.
Right.
And from the perspective of the owner. My thing is, Tyler O'Neill has just started to get hot the past couple years. That's what I think, personally, the Cardinals are looking at. Is he the long-term investment on their team? Or was he just, and I hate to say it, was he just a one-hit wonder?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts, James?
I think the way to look at that, too, and I did find one of the comps that the arbitrator, one of the comps was Joey Gallo. And,
okay.
I kind of tend to agree because Gallo, while he struck out a ton, I mean, he did have the one true tool of hitting home runs. Now, obviously, O'Neill brings good defense, Gold Glover last year. He has tons of speed. So, I mean, in terms of that, the comp isn't there. I did find it oddly coincidental, though, that on the day that the news comes out that he loses the arbitration hearing, he's not in the lineup tonight. So, I don't know if that's just another slap in the face or if it was a scheduled day off for Tyler. But I mean, you're right. He's struggling. And, other than the last couple of years in 2020, again, the outlier, he did have a good year, but he dealt with COVID and also that slowed him down a little bit. But, you look at last year tearing the cover off the ball, but even though he had the production he had, he was hurt. And he missed a substantial amount of games. I think it was 40 or 45 games that he missed. And it's hard for me to fathom paying a player an extreme amount of money if you're paying them to sit on the bench or sit on the IL. I mean, and I understand not every injury is always the player's fault, but at some point you have to look at it from a big picture point of view and go, okay, so he had a great year last year. He's struggling this year. Will he stay healthy? Will he have a bounce back year? I mean, and I know anything in sports and in life for that fact, nothing is guaranteed, but there has to be some consistency. And that's the one thing Tyler O'Neill has lacked.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm looking at, I got a stats here. Tyler O'Neill, 2021 was the big outlier in all of this. He played in 138 games. That's the most he's played in his career. Now, when that's the most he's played in his career, that like you said, it raises a big red flag. He hit 34 home runs that year. So this is what we got here. In 2018, he hit 9 home runs. The next year, 5. The next year, 7, and then the 34 home runs. But the big thing for me, it comes down to games because I know home runs are kind of like the passing game of baseball.
Yep. Chicks dig the long ball.
Right. Chicks dig the long ball. But look at Tyler O'Neill's amount of games he's played. So let's say there's 162 games in a season. And so you do, just 162 times 4. So we'll just do 4 years. And that is 648. So out of 648 games, he has played just over 300 games. That's not going to get it done. That's not going to – you will not have leverage in any contract discussions when you're playing just over 300 out of 648 games.
Right.
Because what people need to understand is this is not just like how he hit, did he hit like go 3 for 4 in X amount of games? No, this is just how many games he played.
Right.
I mean, he's only had this is his 5th year. There's only one season in his career in which he played over 100 games. It's not that he's not talented, but it's that he's not consistent. And it's a hurtful thing to say. I know a lot of people will be pissed off to hear it, but it is true. Tyler O'Neill is not consistent as of this moment.
Right.
Can he be? Of course. He's 27 years old. He can definitely, turn it around. And that's what I hope, for his sake. But, I don't see the point in this whole thing being a big fuss over that amount of money because Tyler O'Neill, to me, should not have leverage when he's missed so much time.
I agree.
Injuries are unfortunate, but they're a part of the game, and players have been dealt with worse hands. And so that's how I feel about the situation.
Well, one of the best abilities you can have in professional sports is availability. And over the last couple of years, I mean, it's just not been there. And if he does play, let's say he plays in another 20 games last year or even another 15, he probably is a 40 home run player. And then maybe that changes things a little bit. But, you cannot pay somebody if they're not going to be able to be in your lineup on a daily basis. You just can't do it.
No, I mean, which is why I had question marks and reservations about the entire Corey Dickerson signing. I know it wasn't like the massive, massive contract people thought somebody that they were going to go out and get for a player, but at the same time, Corey Dickerson was not even signed to be an everyday player. Like, so you're paying a heck of a lot of money for a guy that you intentionally are not playing every day. Because basically what's happening is he's playing when Pujols doesn't.
Right.
Like people. There's folks out there that got to understand they're catering to Albert Pujols, which is totally fine. He's 42 years old. This is his last season. I mean, but they're catering to when he can hit. They know when he can hit best against which pitchers, and they work around that. So they get a guy like Dickerson out there to basically, fill in his place. And once again, not too much success this year. The Cardinals, believe it or not, and a lot of people may find this really hard to believe. And it's something I'm definitely going to have to check. I'm checking actually right now, at least with the sake of the run differential. But in fact, here it is right now. So the Cardinals are plus 22 in the run differential, while the Kansas City Royals are at minus 46. I had mentioned that at the top of the show.
Right.
Third worst in the majors. But at the same time, the Cardinals have an offensive problem as well. They're not consistent when it comes to scoring runs.
It's true.
And this, to me, I definitely want your thoughts on this. I almost feel like this is going to be kind of an experiment year with a lot of players. Get a lot of these young guys up and see, Brendan Donovan, Juan Yepez is two perfect examples of guys see what they can do, and they'll be future stars on this team.
Right. Well, it's funny that you mentioned Juan Yepez and Brendan Donovan because the Cardinals are up 3-0 on the Orioles, and those two have driven in all 3 runs.
That is very true.
And you were talking about Dickerson and Pujols in the DH spot. Well, if Juan Yepez
I'm sorry to cut you off, James. It is. I just got breaking it. It is 7-0 Cardinals.
Wow.
In the end of the 4th inning. So, heading into the top of the 5th, the Cardinals are up 7-0. And we're gonna quickly cut to that just so I can see.
Yeah, I'm looking at it too.
Yeah, Goldschmidt got 2 RBIs. Edman got an RBI. Arenado, Yepez got 2 RBI.
Yeah,
or each got an RBI. And Donovan got 2 RBIs. So and definitely continue with your point because you were bringing up a great point. I just wanted to break that news out there.
I'm glad because I really just looked at that and it was 3-0. So they scored. They scored in a hurry there. No, what I was going to say, guys like Juan Yepez and Brendan Donovan continue to hit. Donovan's got a spot at shortstop, but if Yepez continues to hit, that's going to cut into Dickerson and Pujols' both their at-bats. We all talked about at the beginning of the year that Pujols needed 21 home runs to get to 700. Well, I know it's still early in the year, but if Juan Yepez continues to hit the way he is, Pujols may not get the at-bats needed to even get a chance to get to 700. But you're right. These young players are making a splash already. I mean, prior to the 4-run outburst there by the Cardinals in the bottom of the 4th, it was 3-0. Yepez homered again, and then Brendan Donovan with a 2-run double made it 3-0. And you're seeing that those young guys, when they come up, they can provide that spark plug. And I know people will say, well, I bet Nolan Gorman could do the same. Well, not if you're striking out. If you're not putting the ball in play, at least if you put the ball in play, you're forcing the defense to make a play, and then that can lead to an error and, crooked runs. I think that's what happened. Yeah. There was on the single that Edman hit the left, there was an error by the left fielder, and that kind of opened the floodgates in that inning. So, but, it's going to be interesting. You're right. These younger players are going to get a chance this year. And I think under Ali Marmol, I think we've already seen that these younger players are going to thrive. I mean, that we all forget that he was a player in the Cardinals system once himself. So he kind of knows, I think, how to handle the younger players in comparison to some of the other managers and other coaches on this staff. And having Skip Schumacher certainly does not help, or doesn't hurt, rather.
I was about to say, I think people may underestimate the fact that, I like Arlie Marmel, but I think Skip Schumacher being on the coaching staff is one of the best, most underrated decisions that has been made in all of baseball this season, because Skip Schumacher is definitely a beloved former player here, and you know he brings a wealth of knowledge to the table, and it's interesting to think though that there's some players that are still on the team that played with him, or right as his career was winding down, they started coming up.
Right.
So it's kind of interesting. So like I said, right now we'll go one last slew of updates for then we head to the Stanley Cup playoffs. But yeah, it is 7-0 heading into the top of the fifth. The Orioles have a runner on first, and there's one out. Meanwhile, at the top of the fifth, the Royals are up 1-0 over Texas, and they have 2 on with nobody out. And I know we were keeping track of what's going on with Boston and their struggles this year based off the Xander Bogaerts trade possibilities, and they're still deadlocked 3-3 with the Braves in the bottom of the sixth. So we're going to shift gears now, and we're going to go into the St. Louis Blues in the Stanley Cup playoffs. I could not stress enough how imperative it was for the Blues to win Game 5. I personally feel that if the Blues lost Game 5, they lost the series. That's my mindset, because Minnesota is one of the toughest cities to, or I should say one of the toughest stadiums, like the Minnesota Wild. Going to Minneapolis, St. Paul is one of the toughest places to play in the NHL. And for them to go there, and for Tarasenko to have a natural hat trick. And for those that don't know what that is literally where you make 3 straight shots and you score 3 straight goals. And He did all of that in the third period. It's the equivalent of the natural cycle where you go single, double, triple, home run in that order.
Yep.
So Tarasenko and Binnington, who, this is what's interesting. And James, I really want your insight on the whole goalie battle. This is not a battle we thought was going to happen. But this year, in I believe something about the goals save percentage, basically, Vince Husso ranked 9th. Jordan Binnington ranked well below that.
33rd.
Yes. He ranked 33rd. And even in the playoffs, it's just glaring how much he struggled. He stopped 28 shots, only allowed 2 goals on Tuesday. So here's my question. Game 6 in St. Louis, the chance for the Blues to clinch the series, advance to the semifinals, face off against the Avalanche, who I said at the top of the show, in my opinion, are the best team in the Western Conference, possibly in all of hockey. Who are you riding with between the pipes in Game 6?
Oh, it's got to be Jordan Binnington. Binnington has shown in the last 2 games, the stopping the 39 or 29-31 last night, 28-30 on Sunday. Unless I see a big fall off from Binnington, like back to the regular season where he really, really struggled, where he was really noisy in the crease, he was allowing, juicy rebounds, couldn't, control the rebounds, everything coming back out into the slot. I've got to stay with Binnington, and I like Billy Husso, but there was something about Game 3 with Husso in net where he looked like the Billy Husso before he really found his game. And I don't know if it was just there was an argument there that, oh, well, Husso's never been there before, he doesn't know how to bounce back, But, you're talking about, look, in back-to-back games, he allowed 13 goals total. There's no way. And look, we can talk about the injuries that the Blues defensemen have gone through. You've gone through a slew of players that you didn't really even think would get dressed, let alone, see the ice. in this series. But there's something about Jordan Bennington, and I think it goes back to he just has this mentality. He's like, tell me I can't. And there's just something about him that I think he thrives under these kind of situations. And we saw it back in 2019 going into Boston, going into the Garden there, where he was under barrage. We'll go back to Game 7. I mean, that could have been easily 4-0 Boston in the first period of that game. And Bennington he stood on his head and stopped everything his way. And I just think there's some kind of mentality. And I'm a huge Jordan Bennington fan. I have been since he came up. And there was a part of me that wanted to see him start the playoffs. And I'm going to understand Husso earned that spot. But unless I see Jordan Bennington begin to struggle and things really to go downhill, he's my goaltender the rest of the playoffs.
I think a good analogy is, think of it like this. At the start of the 2018 season in the NFL, Nathan Peterman started over Josh Allen.
Mm-hmm.
And, you look at where Josh Allen is now. So, yeah, Jordan Bennington, it's interesting because Husso was phenomenal in the regular season. But he has given up some bad goals in the postseason.
Yeah, yes.
I think Game 4 was probably the most glaring of that, of just showing, how rough it was for him. It was either Game 3 or Game 4. But
it was Game 3. Was that the Kaprizov goal where he banked it in off the back of Husso because of his positioning was bad? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
that's what I was
going to touch on. Yeah, yep. That was the one. And, Craig Berube is not one to have a lot of patience with struggles. He wants what's best he always wants the best out of his players, and he always is going to have faith in them, but he's also going to make it clear to them that you don't got time to slack off.
Right.
And the thing of it is, in a way, I would go with Bennington in Game 6, if for nothing else, to make sure that if you do win and you go to face Colorado, you got 2 solid goalies ready to roll.
Agreed.
Because if Bennington's struggling, say he was, and you only have Husso, and you somehow pull it out and you do end up winning the series, then you're going to Colorado, and if one goalie goes down or something happens, you got a half-ready goalie in there, and there is no team you can slack on in the NHL right now like the Avalanche.
Agreed.
They absolutely bull rushed Nashville just like they did last year against the Blues.
Right.
They went right through St. Louis last year, and they did the exact same thing versus they swept them 4-0, but they won 5-3 in the final game, and I know
they hung 7 on them twice, didn't they?
2 different games. They had hung 7 goals on the Predators. Just Nashville did not have an answer. And Nashville's a talented. Yeah, okay, here we go. In Game 3, they won 7-3. So Nashville may score 2-3 goals a game, which in a lot of cases should be enough.
Right.
But hell, Colorado's out there scoring 6 and 7 goals a game.
I think the other thing that hurt Nashville in that series too was losing UC Staros. And when you lose your big Finnish goaltender like that, and Dave Rittich looked like he was invisible to the puck, or he was allergic to it, one of the two, because he couldn't stop a cold. And you bring in Ingram, and that was the one game where Nashville hung with Colorado, and Colorado won it in overtime on a Cale Makar goal.
Yeah.
I kind of felt bad. Nashville loses Saros, and that's all she wrote. But I will say this much about Colorado. There's one thing the Blues do have as an advantage over the Colorado Avalanche, and that is their goaltending. I don't trust Darcy Kemper as far as I can pick up my car and throw it. And the thing is, Nashville, as I watched that game, they tried to finesse the Avalanche, and you cannot do that. You have to get in Kemper's kitchen. That's the job of Braden Shin and Alexei Toropchenko. Those guys being a David Perron. And I'll tell you right now, if you win this series and get to Colorado, David Perron's going to want to exact some revenge. Remember, he didn't get to play last year because of COVID in that series.
That's true.
And you're also looking at a Vladimir Tarasenko now that, boy, I don't think I'd want to play against that pissed off Russian. Kaprizov last night, he had the spotlight for, all of the first period, and Tarasenko's like, you know what, I'm done with this. And, puts up the natural Hattie in the third period. You're seeing guys now that, Brandon Saad gets on the board for, the first time in the playoffs. He's another guy that can get to the front of the net and really do some damage. I mean, you need him to be what Washington has in TJ Oshie right now. Oshie has 2 goals tonight, and they've both been deflection goals in front of Sergei Bobrovsky against Florida. And, everybody thought Florida, who won the President's Cup, was the President's Trophy, rather, was just going to run through the Capitals. But when you have a team that can play physical, whether it's Oshie, Tom Wilson, whoever, and get in front of the net and get in front of the crease and disrupt the goaltender, that's how you beat those teams. And that's what the Blues have to do against Colorado. And I know I'm putting the cart before the horse here, but if you get to that series, you've got to play physical. You've got to slow down Nathan McKinnon. You've got to make sure that you can't leave those guys unmarked in the slot like they did with Kaprizov the other night.
Absolutely. And right now, score updates in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So the Pittsburgh Penguins are actually trailing the New York Rangers 4-3. And if Pittsburgh wins tonight, they clinch and they advance. Yep. But they're trailing right now, and there's only about 8 minutes to go on the third. And then, you had mentioned, they thought it was going to be – it's a much different series right now between Washington and Florida. Right now they're tied up 3-3 at the end of the second period. And the series is tied 2-2.
Yep.
And, you're absolutely right. Like, they thought a lot of people out there had felt, Florida, who won the President's Trophy, that, they finished, I believe, they went 58-18-6.
I know.
Like, really think about that. But Colorado was not too different. Colorado went 56-19-7.
Right.
Like, I think the point difference is, let's see. Yeah, 3. There's the 3-point difference between Colorado and Florida for the President's Trophy this season. And Colorado, to me, has while their defense, to me, has question marks. The biggest test, whether they face the Wild or the Blues in the semifinals, because we don't know yet. But whoever they face, it's going to be the defense of the other team that's going to determine if they win.
Right.
The Blues defense is going to have a lot more work cut out for them, for example, or the Wild defense than their respective offenses, because Colorado's a juggernaut when it comes to their offensive schemes. And yeah, it amazes me that their series, every other series, has been such a nail biter. Let's really put this in perspective, folks. So, okay, Blues are up 3-2. The Hurricanes up 3-2 over Boston. The Maple Leafs up 3-2 over the Lightning. The Flames and Stars are tied at 2 apiece before tonight's game. Washington and Florida tied 2 apiece. Pittsburgh up 3-1. Meanwhile, Colorado swept.
Right.
And then I almost forgot. Edmonton and the Kings. The Kings are up 3-2.
Yep.
And that was a series in which Edmonton was heavily favored. The Oilers were actually the heavy favorites going into that one. And quick side note, I get a kick out of that series just because it's, to me, the battle of Gretzky's teams.
Yeah.
I don't count the Rangers and the Blues in that type battle.
Right.
We all know it's basically the Oilers and the Kings. So I definitely, that. And meanwhile, I think we just I got a score update here on the Royals game, and it is 3-0 Kansas City as Bobby Witt Jr. just hit a 2-run double down the left field line. So, and there was a terrible error by Charlie Culberson, and with Whit Merrifield on third base, yeah. Also, at the end of the fifth inning, it is 7-1. St. Louis is ahead of the Baltimore Orioles. So, here, final prediction for tomorrow's Game 6. Who's the biggest key player in this game, and who do you have winning?
The biggest key in this game is going to be Jordan Bennington, because they're going to have to. There's going to be a storm. The Wild are going to come out in the first period and try to just really set the tone, whether it's physically or not. The grief line, with Jordan Greenway, Erickson Ek, those guys are going to come out and try to kind of dictate how they want to play the game. I think it's going to be Jordan Bennington. I also think the officials are probably going to call this game a little closer than they have, because I think there's going to be some more post-whistle, shenanigans, if you will. I mean, and I love how Minnesota has tried to bait the Blues into it, and they've just kind of been able to skate away. But other than Bennington, I think that if I'm Craig Berube, you've got to continue to try to slow down Kirill Kaprizov, which is a lot easier said than done. But I think I'm going to keep the line of Kyrou, Thomas, and Saad together, because my goodness, you separated them. They started to struggle. You broke them up a little bit. You put them back together, and then Kyrou has a great night. Saad gets his first goal of the playoffs last night. Things just seem to be clicking right now. In terms of that, health-wise, the Blues are getting healthier. You got Letty and Bortuzzo back last game. Unfortunately, this is going into that Colorado series, and I'm just going to assume that the Blues are going to win one of the next two games. The bad news is Torrey Krug, because Berube made the comment that Krug is going to be out and he's going to miss some considerable time. I firmly, from talking to some of the guys in the know that I know, I don't think you see Torrey Krug the rest of the 2022 season, which is certainly hurts. But we've seen that Letty can work a power play, and I'll tell you what, he hadn't played in 4 months, and Scott Perunovich came out and looked fantastic running the first power play unit on the point the other night. He may move the puck just as well as Torrey Krug, if not more. The only thing I would want more is for him to shoot. But I think the Blues will ultimately win tomorrow night. I think they win at 4-2, 3-2 with a late empty netter by very well could be David Perron. I think the Blues finish things up, and then we look forward to starting game 1 of the Colorado series on Sunday night or Monday.
All right, we'll see what happens.
And if that's the case, I'm sorry, Blues fans, prepare for more 8:30 p.m. starts.
God, yeah, I'm not looking forward to that. Meanwhile, I wanted to give a couple updates on the NBA playoffs, because I'm just going to be honest. As far as sports playoffs go, this has been one of the most intense, just postseason in general,
right,
in pro sports that we've seen in a while. Because right now, with 14 seconds left, the Celtics are up by 2 on Milwaukee, and the series is tied at 2 apiece. The Warriors are up 3-1 on Memphis, but a big part of that's because John Morant's basically done.
Yeah,
and
I hate that too. Being a big Grizzlies fan, that disappointed me after them coming out of the first round against the T-Wolves, and then John Morant getting hurt, and and he's got a deep bone bruise, and he's
deep bone bruise in his ankle, and they play tonight at 9:30 Eastern. So honestly, tip-off shouldn't be too much longer away.
Right.
And tomorrow you have the Heat facing off against the Philadelphia 76ers, and the Heat are up 3-2 in that series. And you mentioned about injuries, and a big part of that, breaking news right now, it's now 108-107 Milwaukee with 11 seconds left. So I'm going to definitely stay on the air through the remainder of that game. I know in basketball, 11 seconds can go a long time.
Go a half an hour, depending if you have a replay.
That's what I'm saying. That's the funny thing. So nevertheless, Miami, a big thing about them, Jimmy Butler's just been absolutely unstoppable. Joel Embiid on the Sixers getting injured was the big dagger for Philly. That was the big dagger that's really set them back. And James Harden, there's a lot of talk on sports media outlets about James Harden and how he fits in on a championship contender, and I'm just going to say it. James Harden cannot win a championship as the leader of a team.
Agreed.
He is not that guy.
But
He is one of the greatest scorers in NBA history, but he is not that guy that can lead a team to a championship.
Right. You made the comment, how does he fit in on a championship team? He doesn't.
I mean, you're absolutely right. Like to me, he's in the same. You can't. It's funny. You could say the same about Kyrie, but then again, you can't because Kyrie has a championship.
Yep.
And he's the one that had the clutch 3-pointer in that game.
Yep.
But when you got a team with Kevin Durant, who is top 5 pure dominant scorers in NBA history, in my opinion, and you can't capitalize with that with Kyrie, who is a clutch shooter. Just there's a lot of baggage that comes with him as of late.
Can I give you a comparison there? It's something we actually already touched on. You talked about the Edmonton Oilers. Talk about wasting a career. Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, all the talent in the world, but they can't win a championship.
I think that's one of the worst things in sports is watching teams waste careers of outstanding athletes.
Dan Marino,
I think here's an interesting one.
Barkley.
Yeah. Well, I just love how the Packers have literally had about 20-something years of nothing but Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers, and they only have 2 Super Bowls to show for it. And one of those Super Bowls came in Brett Favre's 4th year. Mm-hmm. And then Aaron Rodgers came in his 5th year, but his 3rd as a starter.
Right.
Because remember, Aaron Rodgers was second fiddle to Brett Favre for years. And speaking of which, we got a comment here from Ariana, who is a big Green Bay Packer fan, although she's definitely not happy that Devontae Adams is no longer on the team. Meanwhile, with 6 seconds to go, God, this game will never end. It is 108-107 Milwaukee. Who do you got? You got the local guy, Jason Tatum, in this with Boston, or you got the defending champs? Who do you think's going to win this one?
I'm a huge Jason Tatum fan. I really do hope Boston knocks off Giannis, and I'm a huge Giannis fan. Don't get me wrong. I love to watch the Greek Freak play, but it's all about the local players for me. So I'm hoping Jason Tatum gets it done.
I'm upset that this series is happening now.
Right.
I wanted this to be the series that determines who goes to the finals.
Right.
That's to me, because I think whichever team wins this series will go to the finals.
I would agree.
These are the two, to me, don't get me wrong, the Heat are a very solid team, but these are the 2 best teams. And the fact that the Bucks are fighting as well as they have and have played as well as they possibly could without Chris Middleton.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the biggest factor. And see, once again, 109-107 with 5 seconds. So now
I was getting ready to look.
Yeah, right now, if you're Boston, you're in that situation where, I mean, I don't know if they're getting a second free throw, but one thing or in one way, it's going to be close. But like I said, folks, here it is, 110-107 with 5 seconds. And yes, folks, here
it's over.
It's unless they can get. Yep, there it is. It is final. The Milwaukee Bucks beat the Boston Celtics 110-107. Like I said, I apologize for my nasally voice. It's allergies kicking in really bad. But they take a 3-2 series lead. I'm a big Jason Tatum fan, but I'm sorry. Bucks. Oh my God, I love Milwaukee on this. If they're okay, this is how I look at it. There are only 2 teams in the playoffs I would want to see win the finals, and that's the Bucks or the Celtics.
Yeah.
So whichever team wins the series, I want to win. But my first choice is Milwaukee. Right. I was really happy Giannis got a ring last year. But, it's also kind of the thing with a guy like Brad Beal, a local athlete, St. Louis. And there's another example, though, James. A great career that's just been wasted on a lot of subpar Wizards teams.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of talent on these teams, but just overall, they can't get the job done.
Right.
Like, they're just the mediocre section. Like, they'll make the playoffs, but they're just at the bottom tier of it.
agree. Yep.
But with that, James, I want to thank you so much for for joining us, and thanks for keeping track of everything. Let everybody know, do your little cheap plug where they can find you on social media for all the latest updates.
On Twitter, you can find me at JC_Knox80. On Facebook, just put in, search James Knox. And once we get through, I'm almost through the heart of my high school season here, getting ready to go into the postseason. Knox's Corner will make a return as well. We've just been extremely busy. Looking forward to hopefully doing a show on Friday. We're going to, break down the NFL schedule release, which is tomorrow night, which I am looking forward to. And this will get me killed again after making the Nolan Gorman comment earlier. After all of that, being a Rams fan, we get the Christmas Day afternoon game against the Denver Broncos and Russell Wilson. So Aaron Donald and Russell Wilson will get to exchange Christmas presents. I'm sure Russell Wilson will not want his, but I know, speaking for the Packers and the Cowboys, I think that was released earlier that's going to be the Week 13 Thursday night game. So, that should be an interesting one too, especially since both teams have retooled, and one team is retooled anyway. The Packers, but I tell you what, that's going to be another topic for another time, especially as we get closer to the NFL season. But
absolutely,
what a dumpster fire of an organization roster-wise right now.
It's just an absolute mess. And James, I'm definitely going to be talking to you later. Thank you so much for being on this evening, and
it's always my pleasure.
Keep up all the great work. Okay.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
All right. James Knox here live on Roundabout Sports, presented by Interstate 70 Sports Media. Have yourself a good evening, my friend.
You as well, sir.
Thank you. Well, folks, just top-notch, just a great guy, James Knox is, and I want to thank you all so much for tuning in this evening. We're going to work to actually potentially have a special episode this Saturday night. It would be at 7:30 Central Standard Time. We're going to try to get some of the lovely ladies from the arch rival roller derby team on Roundabout Sports, because coming up on May 21st, Dynamo Pro Wrestling and the arch rival roller derby team will be teaming up for a dual event, which one of my favorite events. It's called Jams and Slams. So the first half of the evening is going to be the arch rival roller derby matchups, and the second half is Dynamo Pro Show, Dynamo Pro Wrestling out here in St. Louis. And I'll be posting more info on that on Interstate 70 Sports Media on Facebook. But before we go, as always, I'm going to put at the bottom of our screen here the National Suicide Hotline. Mental illness is a real concern. Suicide awareness is important. And you may be one person that feels alone in the world, but I want you to know that you are never alone. There's always somebody out there that loves you. And it's always a pleasure doing this every single week. And I'm looking forward to doing it more often. So once again, you can find us on Spotify, Breaker, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. Please check us out on YouTube, Interstate 70 Sports Media. You can find us at Facebook, on Twitter, the Interstate 70 Sports Media and Roundabout Sports. And, you can see right there, you can see my Twitter hashtag or my Twitter account right there. With that, I want to thank you all so much for tuning in. Once again, I want to thank James Knox for being on. With that, we also have other guests in store. One of them we're looking for is, and I actually do want to make a correction. Next Wednesday is when we're aiming on having the lovely ladies from the arch rival roller derby team. This Saturday, we're looking on having Nicholas Rousseau, who is a very, very busy man. He is a worker with Cinema St. Louis, STL TV. He's a producer and a videographer, and so we're looking to get him on for this Saturday night. So stay tuned to the Facebook page and Twitter account for more updates on that. With that, I just want to say, as always, Life is a book full of empty pages just waiting to be written in. Make your lives worth reading. God bless and good night.